5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the MarketingSherpa Podcast. We're going to have an in-depth marketing discussion about a crucial topic starting now. You might have found yourself in a similar challenge, marketers, but I know I've been there. So you got the new client, you got the campaign you're about to launch, email you're about to write, whatever. There's a big giant campaign, whether it's a small thing, there's some way you're trying to market your product, advertise, promote it. But here's the thing, there's nothing there. What do you say about the product? What does it really have? What is that truth well told, as McCann says? Well, this, folks, is what we call the value proposition. And today on the MarketingSherpa Podcast, we're going to help you understand what the value proposition is, how it can power your marketing, and how you can use it to get some leverage within your organization. Talk to business leaders, talk to your clients in a really smart way that can have a huge impact. And joining me today to have that discussion is a man who spent many years studying the history of the value proposition, what value propositions work today. He's toured the country helping different brands discover their value proposition. He's got a powerful value proposition of his own. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Austin McCraw. Thanks for joining us, Austin.
Dan, you sound so official and professional with that voice of yours.
This is
it's a
the
little
intimidating.
I think you may have imparted to me a value proposition that's beyond what I was expecting. So, but no, thank you. Thanks for those kind words, and excited to be on the show, excited to be a part of this. And yeah. So what are we talking about? We're talking about value props today.
We're talking about value proposition, yeah. And this is Sweep Weeks on the MarketingSherpa Podcast, is why I'm so excited. So we want to really see what do people think of the podcast. You can let us know. editor@marketingsherpa.com. Do all the different ratings, you kind of different systems. Let us know the next topic that you want to hear. But value proposition is so fundamental to marketing. Right. It really applies to everyone. So Austin, let's start just answering the question. Value proposition. We've heard this term a lot. I'm sure a lot of marketers have in business and stuff. But what are we really talking about here? How do we define it?
Yeah. Okay. So when I interact with marketers and various business leaders in the country, I find that there are several words and phrases that get thrown around this topic. So, probably many of our listeners, when they went to business school or marketing school, they probably heard unique selling proposition, USP, or they may have heard. Porter talks a lot about differentiation, and so that gets thrown around. We've got to differentiate. You got to have, value differentiation, point of parity. Ogilvy, no one knows this, but Ogilvy actually came up with what he called the basic selling proposition, the BSP. No one uses that today, even though everyone knows who Ogilvy is. But yeah, different words are getting to use, and they're all around this fundamental aspect of business and marketing. When you're trying to sell a product, you're trying to put an offer out there, there's this fundamental reason why it deserves to exist in your customer's life. Why would someone buy this product versus any other product that's out there? I mean, that's when we say value proposition, we're not talking about a business model. We're not talking about, and a lot of people mistake it for some catchy, tagline or slogan. We're not talking about those things. We're talking about a fundamental reason, because ultimately, when you are trying to market to a prospect or a customer, they are weighing in their head, why should I take this action? Why should I buy this product? And if your the positive responses to that question can't outweigh the negative responses to it, then you're not gonna get a customer.
No matter how good that email is written, because I can write some really good emails, Austin.
Dan, you write some fabulous emails.
But yeah, so breaking down that word, we got two words there.
Yeah.
We got two words. We got proposition.
And
we got value.
And we have value.
So proposition, that's a promise, right? That's what we're doing in marketing. We are proposition. We're making that kind of promise to the audience.
I appreciate you trying to, coax me here in terms of, offend me a little bit by saying that. And so I've heard a lot about promises.
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting word. I keep being told by Cliff here to hold the mic closer to my mouth. So I'm going to try to, Cliff is our sound tech over there. Very intimidating. So I'm going to try to hold it closer to my face here. But a promise is, maybe it's a good word. The word that we try to use over here, we like to use, or it feels like it's a little bit better, is we want to create this expectation. It's not so much you declaring, here's what I'm going to do for you. That's kind of when I hear promise. Dan, I'm going to promise this to you. You honestly want the customer to kind of formulate an expectation. So instead of writing a really good, clever email with, really good quotes and catchy lines that that basically make promises, writing an email that naturally fosters an expectation is much more powerful.
Now, if anyone's listening and they're saying, well, wait a minute, value proposition, that sounds like a big fundamental thing for my entire company, my brand. I'm not the CEO. I'm not the CMO.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, these promises that you said, no, it's not promises, I'm joking. But what you're talking about,
there you go again.
Where people are, coming with these expectations for themselves. That's really not just at the universal company level, right? I mean, how does that affect each and every one of us in our day-to-day?
Yeah. So, it's a good question. And certainly there is a fundamental value proposition for your organization. And if you are the leader of that organization, you better know what that is and you better guard it. But for others, anytime that you're trying to get the customer to make a decision, there's an inherent value proposition. Anything, even as something as simple as getting a click from an email, your subject line has its own inherent value proposition. And honestly, the inbox is one of the most competitive environments that is on the planet. So, I don't want to teach too much here, but we've typically identified 4 different kinds of value propositions that organizations generally have to face. So you have the primary, which is that big one that seems, oftentimes difficult, a lot of business strategy. But then you have prospect level. Maybe you're a marketer that's focused on a particular prospect type. You have your own value proposition for that prospect. Maybe you own a product. That product has its own value proposition, and it's not just a value proposition that's working against other products in the marketplace. It's actually a value proposition that you have to watch out about, against your own products within your organization. You've got to guard that. So, and then even for those that are very tactical and writing emails or writing social media campaigns, every time you want someone to click a button or take an action, we call that process level value proposition. You've got to craft a value prop, and we could spend a lot of time here, but you got to craft a value proposition, even for getting a click.
And even when I was joking earlier, how Austin has a value proposition,
right?
But each of us do too. So let's say you're listening to the podcast, maybe you don't even have a job right now.
That's right.
You got to look at that resume.
That's right.
You got to look at that cover letter. Say,
That's
what
right.
is the value proposition of me for this specific job and for this specific role?
One of my favorite things to have been able to do with value proposition is take the research we've done in all the tests we've run on value proposition, all the marketing, and take those learnings and help people apply that to their own lives, thinking through what is their value proposition to a particular organization, using that to advance their career, I think has been really, really meaningful. Also, you can find these organizations, to your point, that their value proposition is closely connected either to an individual in that organization. The first thing that obviously comes to mind is like Steve Jobs and it's his imparting of his value proposition to Apple. Can they survive without that level of value proposition? But also cultures have a value proposition in terms of an organization itself kind of forming a personality that has its own value proposition. I think that stuff is very fascinating. We don't talk too much about it, but that we have certainly seen that.
And we won't talk too much about it today, Austin. Because what I want to really do is get some actionable
Can we
advice.
talk more about value prop theory? Because I really just want to,
get deep into that. Could be a whole separate podcast. Austin with a cigar and some.
That's right. That would be great. That would be great.
But let's get really good. Let's give some actionable advice to the listeners. So here's why I think value proposition is pretty powerful for any marketer in an organization, no matter what level, because they're really the voice of the customer in the organization. And what they can do is get all the key decision makers, all the players, business leaders, people in product development, and get together and decide what is the value proposition for X. So like you said, maybe it's the whole company. Maybe it's just a product. Maybe it's just this campaign.
Can I pause you for a moment? Like, can I push the pause button because you're doing, like, what you're saying sounds great, but you just hit something that I think, because you mentioned what you asked earlier about marketers that feel like they don't have a lot of control or they can't impact that. I have found that the value proposition is kind of sometimes the marketer's way into impacting that business strategy. And it's kind of a little covert. It's a little bit, for our listeners, this is a little secret, right? If say you're not the leader of the organization yet, if you want to work your way towards that, oftentimes because you are the representative of the customer, you can start talking about things about value proposition as a way. I mean, I have been in conversations with marketers who got their CEOs and all their executives in the room just because we're talking about something that's fundamental to the value proposition. I don't know if that's where you're going with it, but
you're taking a much more Machiavellian tack than you. And that's fine, Austin. But I'm thinking
for good purposes. This is all for good purposes.
No, you're specifically saying here's how you can secretly take over your company and advance your career. And you're right.
I think for those who wish they had more influence and find themselves in a larger organization, oftentimes value proposition can be powerful for helping influence. So.
Okay, we're going to bifurcate here. So there's two things. You can go from I will advance my career and grow and take over the company. That's Austin's tact. My tact is, hey, you're working on this product, you're working on this service, 40 hours a week, 60 hours a week. You can improve this. You can put out something better in the world for the customer. There's nothing, I think, more frustrating as a marketer when you're investing all your time and all your knowledge into selling something that doesn't really provide value for the people buying it. So this is a way. Get involved with product development, business leaders.
That's huge.
Make it more valuable.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a way to do that. So one thing that Austin does, as I talked about, the value proposition workshops, working for MetLabs Institute, he works with different companies, holds these value proposition workshops, gets key decision makers and leaders in the room, kind of like we're doing, just debate it out and talk about what really matters to the customer, really making them put a stake in the ground, figure out what that value is. And it can really help to have a third party do that, because I know you've gotten into some really kind of territorial and political battles in organizations.
Absolutely.
But based on that, we want to unpack it.
Those are always certainly interesting conversations. These workshops, you never know where they're going to go. You never know what's going to happen with them. You can have all the executives in a meeting. And one of the first things I do, Dan, is ask everyone in the room, by themselves, what's your value proposition? And if I have 15 people in a room, I often get 16 different value propositions. So it is interesting. A lot of sparks often fly. It takes a lot of working together and hashing through some of that stuff.
I'm not going to do the math on that one. I don't know how that works, but it makes sense. So here's what we did. Me and Austin sat down earlier. I pinned Jello to a wall. And we sat down early and we talked about, hey, all these value proposition workshops you've been doing around the country. What are some of the commonalities, some key lessons that different, that our marketers can learn for their own value propositions? And so the first one we hit on, and this is definitely for startups, definitely for kind of those breakthrough companies who are doing something really different, but it could be for other companies as well, is sometimes they look at themselves and they say that they don't really have any competition, right? Because tell us, why is competition so important with the value proposition?
Yeah, there's a couple ways this comes out. I mean, we have worked with startups who they just weren't aware of their competition. They're just so excited about their product. They're just unaware of their competition, and so that's one issue. Probably the most. This one may surprise some of the listeners out there, or maybe it won't. I don't know. I've been in these. In fact, I can think of one workshop in particular where I was working with the marketing team, and we had progressed to a certain point. We were doing really good with the value proposition, but then a leader ended up coming into that meeting somewhat late, and he was great guy, big personality, really big personality, and we were in New York, thick New York accent, big personality, and I said, trying to help catch him up to the group, said, so we're trying to answer this question. If I'm your ideal prospect, why should I buy from you rather than the alternatives, rather than the competition? And his immediate response to me was, we don't have any competitors. There are no alternatives. I mean, it was such a declarative, powerful, and
it's either us or the end of civilization. I mean, that's your basic choice. Us or the vacuum of outer space.
And what was funny is they actually had competitors. He was just so passionate about his product that to him it was foolish for the customer to buy anything else. It wasn't even an option. And so I share this story because one of the biggest challenges is helping people kind of get out of this mindset that customers are just going to come because our product's awesome. oftentimes we can be overconfident with our value proposition. And you know what? I respect that kind of raw passion and pride in the product. And I can even respect the claim that nothing compares to us and we really don't have any alternatives. But the reality is where we had to go in that conversation is it's not that way for your customer. Your customer isn't that passionate about your product yet. They're not that clear about, how you are different from the competitor. To them, there are other options. And they may not be the direct option. They may not be even your direct competitors. They may be some other option, some other way if they're getting that product or the resulting experience of that product. But so thinking through the value proposition can be a good way to kind of help shake some of that. I don't know what we would call it, Dan. Like it's some sort of like prideful blindness to what's really out there.
One thing we call it is company logic, right?
So it is very much a company logic. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's understanding the human condition. Let's not go too deep, but understanding that for a second. There's a reason that's there, right? You work at a company, you're really pulling for them. It's like that raw team effort.
That's right.
Like the Jacksonville Jaguars this year.
Right.
I thought they had no competition.
That's right.
But then reality comes in. They had a 5-11 record.
That's right. That's right.
And it turns out that, they had a lot of competition. And so what it comes to with the marketers is that's where the customer comes in. That's where it helps bringing the customer in the room, right? Because in the four walls of any company, we could be like, we're the best. We're better than anybody else. We've got no competition. But at the end of the day, in the marketplace, the customer is not going to feel the same way. And that's why the customer can help a lot. So that's one of the things we talked about, Austin.
That's right.
To feel like, we're better than the competition.
That's right.
But for startups, I want to bring up another one that we were both in together is you can feel like this is so breakthrough. There's no competition. And I remember this one startup, they said, because we were really trying to push them on that competition, right? They said, okay, think of it this way. We've got a Ferrari. Anything else they could have is a bicycle. And it's, that's compelling and rah. But then when you stop and think, you're like, well, I don't have a Ferrari. And I know you don't have a Ferrari, Austin, but I do own a bicycle.
That's right.
And the reason is because sometimes for the customer, the bike is all they need.
That's
right. They can't afford the Ferrari, or they don't need the Ferrari. So that's
or I mean, you may have a Ferrari and it may be amazingly better than the bicycle, but the customer might be comparing. I mean, it isn't just bicycle versus Ferrari. There, you got Honda Civics in there. You got other cars in there, which might do the job adequately for the price you're looking. For that group in particular, though, they were really powerful. They really did have a Ferrari, and it was a rather unique situation. But yeah, no, it's so easy to create a value proposition by not considering all your competitive set. So this is another challenge that I've experienced at the workshops is oftentimes you don't want to consider, for instance, we've worked with a lot of newspaper organizations, and man, how challenging it has been for those groups to maintain a value proposition in today's marketplace. And it's so easy to go, you know what, if we're the New York Times, our competition is the Boston Globe or some other newspaper, the LA Times or whatever it may be. But maybe they're not thinking about things like just Google, or other, free media outlets. And so, and that's just a classic example just to make that easy. But a lot of almost every organization has a similar form of that.
Hey, quick break from the action to let you know you can learn a lot more about value proposition and how to apply it to your brand, to your marketing challenges with the MEC Labs Value Proposition Development On-Demand Certification course at meclabs.com/valueprop. That's meclabs.com/valueprop. You'll learn a patented methodology. You'll learn how to discover and clearly communicate an effective value proposition. And for podcast listeners, you can even save a little bit off of the cost. Use scholarship code EDU500. That's EDU500 to get a discount. Okay, let's get back into the action. I'm sure I'm about to make an amazing point that will blow Austin's mind right about now. One of the biggest competitors I've seen in my career sometimes is no decision. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes people just choose not to decide on acting on that.
Yes.
Okay, well, we talked about external competition,
Yes.
but there's internal competition as well, right?
Yes. Nice segue. That was great.
That's what you call a segue.
That was great.
There you go. Okay, I set up for you. Hit it out of the park, Austin. Talk to me about internal competition.
Internal competition. Because we mentioned that earlier. So one of the things you have to watch out for is not just especially if you're an organization that's more complex, has a lot of moving parts, different departments, different products. You've got to be aware of the alternative choice between, the iPhone 6 versus the iPhone, 8 or whatever it is. I think, what are we up to now? We're at like...
It's not even a number anymore. It's the X.
Yeah, X. Yeah. So we've actually dated this podcast twice now on the Jags record and the iPhone X.
It's the iPhone 22. So the Jags are going to have that same record for the next 10 years probably, but
okay.
It's the iPhone 22. Let's do that.
Okay, there we go. There we go. So scratch that. All right. So, but no, you have to be aware of the competition there. And in some, I've worked with an organization that had essentially one product, but they had angled it and packaged it in 23 different ways, so that even when I asked the leaders of the organization, okay, so why would I buy this product versus this other one you're offering? They couldn't answer. They didn't have a good answer. I was just in Canada, similar situation. I was just in Canada before the holiday in December, and was working with a group, great group, and they have a free membership and they have a paid membership. But my goodness, they had stacked so much value in the free membership that there really wasn't any reason to be a paid member. And it wasn't intentional. That was because of just the way things happened. They developed the free before they did the paid. With this organization that had 23 different variations of one product, a lot of that's just, as the things progress. But you have to be brave to be able to say, and this can be a challenge sometimes, this product doesn't deserve to exist. We need to choose between one or the other. For the example, the free membership versus the paid, we had to go, okay, we're going to move this benefit from the free to the paid, so that the paid actually has a stronger value proposition than the free. So it's something for your audience to be aware of,
For our audience, Austin.
It is our audience right now, right?
So you talked about teaching earlier. I think this is really where marketers can play the role as teacher, and especially when you get into complex products. So let me tell you about my life, Austin. Here's a great example. I heard when you were saying this. So last night I got my car insurance renewal, right? And so the car insurance renewal, I actually get it in the mail. There's one page that actually shows like
this is for your costs. Ferrari, right?
For my Ferrari, okay. Yeah, my 3 Ferraris. So this is the one. There's one page that shows the cost of everything. There's 40 pages that I don't understand, right? And so this is where marketers could really help out. Like in an industry like that, you could show here's the value proposition of different product levels. Instead, it's so confusing and it's so complex. And really the only number I see, Austin, that's catching my attention is the cost.
That's right.
Right? Because the cost makes sense. I know exactly what, $2,000 is or whatever, but I don't know what the other things are over here. So when you talk about that cost value, when you're weighing the cost and the value when people are deciding, if you don't really clarify that value prop for those different levels, either all they're going to see is the cost and they're just going to go for the cheapest option, the freemium option.
They will go for cheap, or they'll bail. I mean, now if insurance is different because there's some laws and stuff you have to pay attention to, but when you're online on a website and they throw 3 different products at you and you can't tell the difference between them, you start to question yourself, and you can actually lose all potential momentum in the process. So that's huge.
Yeah. So, a key element of value prop. So when we talked about competition, why it's so important, your value prop doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It exists in comparison to your competitors, right? And one key important element of that.
So you're doing a great segue again. This is excellent.
You cannot be led in an interview, by the way. You cannot be led in an interview.
This is a great segue.
Go on.
But and it's just because I don't think as fast as you.
Sure.
So the that example where we had 23 different variations of the value proposition. So we had a situation where we had a web page where there were 3 products on it. 3 variants of that product, and you couldn't tell. I've asked students around the country, what's the difference between these? They can never tell. And so I showed them what we did. And the reason I want to share this is because it's a real practical, tactical thing just for the audience. If you find yourself in that situation, I'm not saying this is a perfect bullet, but this has been very effective for us in our testing, our experimenting, is, providing a feature matrix. I know you've seen that on different websites, and that actually is very effective for quickly helping people navigate the difference between those products. So that's all I wanted to say. You had a wonderful segue, so I'll let you I'm not as good at segues as you are, so I'm
there's
gonna
no
pass
moving
it.
backwards now, Austin.
No,
From now on, we're only moving forward in this podcast. We're not relying on going back. No, that's a good point. And one where I'm going to segue here is because the importance of exclusivity.
Yes.
Right. So there's exclusive. So we talk about competition internally and externally. There should be some exclusivity within that feature matrix between those different elements, but really in the marketplace.
Yes.
Right. There needs to be some exclusivity in the marketplace, and this must be the biggest struggle.
Yeah.
That you see, right?
Yeah, this is the
and I
biggest...
know that because you told me that earlier. But anyway, this must be the biggest struggle that you see.
You say it so confidently, as if you're reading my mind.
I'm just guessing.
How is this happening?
Is the biggest struggle you see.
It is. It's tough. And honestly, you know what? I think the first battle with exclusivity is helping people realize that exclusivity is a non-negotiable. You know, there was a group recently that I worked with, awesome group, awesome team. And we went through the workshop, and this is for those who have been a part of the workshop. This will make more sense. But essentially, every single potential claim of value, the exclusivity was ranked 1. I mean, 1 is the lowest score you can get on exclusivity. They had things that were appealing, but when pressed, I mean, essentially the consensus was, yeah, we're actually trying just to keep up with the competition. And so, and that's a problem. You might be able to survive for a little bit on ignorance. You know, people not knowing that there's a better option out there, or that you're trying. Like, they may have found you first, they may not know. But if they do any little shopping or looking around, they're gonna know that quick. It used to be hard. It used to be easier to survive without exclusivity, because it took time to figure out the options. Today, I mean, my wife right now, when we were doing Christmas shopping this past holiday, she's got 100 tabs open, comparing and looking at things. It's so easy now to comparison shop, and not just for price. So exclusivity is non-negotiable, and exclusivity. I'll say this for those who maybe are discouraged by that statement: exclusivity is possible. There hasn't been a group that I haven't worked with where we weren't able to work our way to discover exclusivity. Even groups that are traditionally considered commodities. That's what I hear a lot of times. It's like, well, what if you're a commodity? What if you're a commodity, Dan? How would you respond to that?
Well, there is only one Daniel Burstein. I don't know about Austin McCross, but there is only one Daniel Burstein.
That is true.
I'll give you.
You have exclusivity. Yeah.
I'll give you a great example of an interview I did in when the product was a commodity. So it was like when you work out, I don't even know what the stuff's called, but like the supplement stuff.
Yes.
And so what he told me is like, hey, I think our supplement's better than other supplements.
Right.
Maybe the flavor's different, whatever. But they're all pretty much the same supplements. He's like, the difference is us. That's the difference.
There you go.
So the difference was their social media, their customer service, the people that were behind that company that were way into working out, way into that culture, the viewpoint they had. They built an actual real relationship, going crazy on social media, crazy with customer service, and being so passionate about the customer. And that was their difference. Because to your point, if they just looked at, okay, we've got this protein powder and you've got that protein powder,
right.
just be like, there's no exclusivity.
That's right. Let me ask you a personal question.
Sure.
Do you like sushi? Are you a sushi fan?
I love sushi.
Do you?
Austin.
Yeah, I like sushi as well. I'm not a huge fan of sushi, but I like sushi. But I had a friend. This is a story I'll share. I share with when I'm trying to explain this. I think it illustrates the point you're making as well. I was with a friend, and he was inviting me to come to a sushi restaurant when I was in town, and he said, "Let me know when you're coming in because it takes 2 weeks to get into the sushi restaurant. 2 stinking weeks for sushi."
That's friction right there.
That is friction, and so that's why I actually asked. Well, I mean, I don't know if. Have you ever
I can get sushi at Publix.
So that's what I was saying. I just go across the street and get some sushi. I mean, sushi, right? And so when I say that with an audience, like immediately, like half the room like hates me, right? Because sushi isn't just sushi, and people know this. But I asked my friend, well, why would someone wait 2 weeks? He told me this. He said, the sushi chefs in this restaurant spend 3 years learning how to cook rice. Isn't that crazy?
That is crazy, in fact, yes.
I mean, I spend 3 minutes cooking rice, but 3 years cooking rice.
I can do minute rice. But yeah, go on.
You see, you're even better. Yeah, so, but what he was saying is that there was a craft, and there was an art, and there was a passion surrounding something as commodity as raw fish and rice. I mean, we can go get that right now. You and I, we could start a sushi restaurant right now pretty easily, but it won't be as good as theirs because we're not as passionate about it. We're not as skilled in it. We haven't created the experience, you know? So even if you have a product, even if you're, I mean, we've done these workshops with people that sold cell phone accessories. My goodness, how hard is it to create a value prop? But they were able to create a value proposition. We've had value prop workshops with precious metals groups, people who sold, I mean, literally commodities like in the marketplace, and able to discover, you know, it was the way in which they did it that made them uniquely valuable. So my only point is two things. Exclusivity is a non-negotiable, but it's a possibility. Every group can find exclusivity.
And I think a key benefit of finding that exclusivity is margins. You're able to charge more. So I'm guessing that sushi restaurant
Absolutely.
where they take 3 years to learn how to cook rice, either they're really, really bad. So there's two lessons I got from that. They're really bad because it took them 3 years to figure out how to cook rice, or they're really good. But
I think anytime you find a phenomenon where you see people like waiting for a long time for something, waiting in long lines, there's a story there with exclusivity. So, you know, for the audience, like when you see that, it's always fun to study and try to understand, okay, what are they doing that makes them unique? So,
right.
Anyway.
Well, and the point, and then when you have that uniqueness, so you've got those long lines, you've got the demand, you also probably have margins, or
that's right.
They can probably charge more for
that's
it.
Right.
So,
that's right.
Which is, I think, Austin, you and I have been blessed by not really liking the finer things in life. So
that's right. That's right. I mean, we go to Publix for our sushi. I mean,
but for the right audience.
But you
for
drive 3 Ferraris,
customer,
so
for the right prospect, it matters, and they'll pay more, right?
Honestly, it was an amazing experience, and I would go. I mean, it was awesome. It was great.
So one thing, but I'm guessing they had to define the ideal customer, right?
That's right.
Isn't that an important part of the value proposition?
That's huge.
Figuring out who it is.
That's huge.
Now, another thing I just want to mention
because you can't be all things to all people.
Right.
You know, that's
Then
one trap that organizations fall into.
Then you're nothing to. So one other thing I wanted to mention about exclusivity, you're talking about when companies actually know about the exclusivity. But one thing I've seen sometimes is companies don't always know. They think they're more exclusive than they are.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a great scene in the company, I think it was called The Internship, where Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. You don't watch movies, so you don't know. But there's this thing called movies. And in those movies, they tell stories with celebrities.
Movies don't have a strong enough value proposition for me yet. So
when you hear those stories, so it's Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn, they go to Google or something to be interns.
Yeah.
And so they're dealing with a much younger cohort. And so they come up with an invention. They're like, what if you take pictures and you instantly post them and then anyone can see them? You know, and their younger cohorts are like, yeah, that's called Instagram. And they're like, no, but wait a minute, but here's my invention. And they're like, no, it's like that. And so an important element is a competitive analysis, right? You can't, again, you can't do this in a vacuum.
That's
the
right.
idea sounds good to you, but you need to know from a competitive analysis,
That's right.
Is it unique?
That's right.
That's all. That's right. Okay.
I think you're making a very, very good point. I don't have anything profound to add to it. I think you're totally right.
That's correct.
I think no, I don't think at all. I don't have anything to add. I'm not going to steal. No, you lead the meeting. I'm going
to let the record show.
Yeah.
Okay, here's where we're going to end it, though.
I called this a meeting. Did you hear that?
It's a meeting of minds with our podcast listeners. Here's where we're going to end it. Because you bring up a fundamental challenge. So this is all very valuable. You can Machiavellian take over your organization with it. You can improve products with it. And really, hopefully, you improve your marketing. Because once you have that exclusivity, boy, that makes for a great headline.
That's right.
But what happens, Austin, when there's not a great value prop?
Ooh.
What happens if you do all this digging and
you're
you come up dry?
You're going to end the podcast on such a down, sad note.
Knowing you're going to turn this into an inspirational message for our audience of what they should do when there's not a great value prop.
Podcast? I mean, come on. No, I think that is not as common. I will say, here's the encouraging thing. If you're in business today, it generally means you have a value proposition. You may not know what it is. In fact, what you think it is might be different as you go through these kind of workshops. I've seen that a lot of times. But there are these situations, and I wish I could name names, but it wouldn't be fair. But there have been situations where we have walked away from the value, or towards the end of the workshop, we go, you know what? We don't have a value proposition. You know, we don't really have. We need to figure out what it is. What's good about that is it actually is honesty. I mean, I know a lot of marketers oftentimes find themselves in the situation of having to market something that doesn't have a value proposition. That is so frustrating. That's so it's like you're putting Band-Aid on a broken leg. Like you just it's very time consuming and frustrating. And so just the freshness of the honesty, getting people to recognize, you know what, we need to get a value proposition again. We need to make some changes. So honestly, that I find it strange, but that has been refreshing for a lot of these groups to be able to hear, you know what, our gut was right. We need to work on this. The second part of that is when you don't have a value proposition, is you work on it. This is a moment to be entrepreneurial. This is a moment to dig down deep, go back to some of the roots for what you had a value proposition at one point. Oftentimes it has eroded as the marketplace has changed. To go back and so with various groups, what we will do is we'll go through what we call kind of a future state activity. We'll use the value prop framework and we'll go, okay, so what potentially could we, add to this, or how could we change this aspect to give it more exclusivity? When you're looking at the appeal and the exclusivity, and I know I'm using words that may not make total sense to everybody, but when you use this framework, you can actually see, okay, we have great exclusivity here, but you know what? We need to do something to the appeal, or we have great appeal here, but the exclusivity is low. So what are some of those tweaks we can make to bring us to a place of exclusivity? And for all the groups that I can think of where we had this situation where we walked away and went, I don't really have a value proposition. We were able to think through that, identify some ways to create a value proposition, and there's your case to your executies. And this oftentimes involves the executives going to them, and this is where value proposition and there's this nexus with the value. So you have value proposition impacts marketing, but it also impacts business strategy. This is where the marketing team can really have that impact on business strategy. And Dan, to erase all this, perspective you've put on me, in terms of being so, me-minded, this is a chance for you to actually create an experience for the customer. That's awesome. That's
all
rewarding.
about the customer.
It really is. It really is.
So then I'm guessing in those situations, not everyone in the room didn't know there was a value proposition. What I mean is probably the marketers knew, the marketing manager, there were people at the ground level who knew like, hey, we've got a problem here. We've been struggling for years, but there were maybe some key leaders
every time
who really didn't have that light bulb go off yet. So this, again, is a really great chance for marketers to go in there with business leaders, with key people in the organization. Let them see what the customer sees. Let them see what you see so you can make positive changes to help the customer.
That's right.
To improve the product.
That's right.
And in Austin's twisted Machiavellian way.
There you go again.
To take over the world. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all we got today. So the value proposition of the Marketing Sherpa podcast is we have these lively chats that you can listen to wherever you are, in your car, when you're walking the dog, whatever you want, to help you improve your marketing based on 25 years of research we've done here at McLabs Institute, based on all of the case studies and data at Marketing Sherpa. Hopefully you found it valuable. If you did, send us an email at editor@marketingsherpa.com. You can even ask for Austin sushi advice for whatever this
anytime, I'd be glad to provide it.
And again,
go to Publix.
Use the rating things, rate us, whatever that is, and let us know what you'd like us to talk about in the next Marketing Sherpa podcast. Thanks for being with us, Austin.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Dan.
And thanks for listening. So you just finished listening and thinking, what can I do next? How can I use this information? How can I improve my results? Well, just go to marketingsherpa.com/results. We've got this great download for you, 21 charts and tools based on $500 million in carefully measured test wins. We'll give you an idea of how to model your customer's mind, and also, get a chance of to understand how you can work with us, McLabs, to help you directly improve your marketing performance. And with that, we don't need to tell them to subscribe and that stuff, right? They're marketers, they're digital, they know, right? Right, Rebecca?
I don't know about that, but I don't know what kind of marketers we would be if we didn't ask them to subscribe and include a call to action here at the end of the podcast. I think the other thing we should mention is like almost everything we do here at Marketing Sherpa, this is technically an experiment. So we are rolling out this podcast for a couple months. We're going to be doing it regularly and producing a lot of really high quality content for our audience. But if we don't see that it's going to make an impact for us and for the people who are listening, we may not keep it going or do it as often. So if you're excited about what we're producing here, you want to hear more of it, you want to hear it more often, definitely subscribe. If you're on a platform that allows you to thumbs up or provide a star rating, please do so for us, because it lets us know that what we're doing here is meaningful to you and your marketing efforts for your customers. And that's really our ultimate goal. And we want to see those results and continue to help you grow. So that's kind of our call to action here.
Yeah, it's kind of meta, we're teaching them how to improve results and how to measure their results better. And we're saying like, hey, we eat our own dog food or drink our own champagne, whatever you want to call it, measuring our own results. At the end of the day, I'm not going to guilt trip them. You subscribe, don't subscribe, do whatever you want. I think Rebecca did mention like a kitten gets its wings or something every time you do subscribe or give a positive review. But again, no guilt trips.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to guilt trip our audience. Please subscribe. We love doing this for you guys, and we think that it provides a lot of value to the people in our audience, and I would really love to keep doing it for you. And we can't unless we know that it's making an impact. So definitely let us know. And the best way to do that is with a subscribe click or a thumbs up or a 5-star rating on iTunes.
All right. Thanks for listening.